Like, man, that's the thing about reading, is when you experience other people's, lives, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, when you experience things through their point of view, it helps you deal with your own stuff. I'm about to watch Fight Club. I'd tell you about it, but if you know, you know. So yesterday did not go according to plan. Most of the day did. It just ended awry, but everything's okay. So I started off the day, the morning, nice cozy morning, reading Hamnet by my ASMR, cozy ambiance situation I had over on the TV, which was lovely. And then I went over and had some work to do that I went and did over at a coffee shop. And then I had a sushi date with my best friend, which was amazing. I hadn't had sushi in a while, and so that was lovely. Got really full on sushi and had a great time with her. And then when I came home from that, my parents moved in with me like a year ago. So my parents live here, and my dad was gone at church, and my mom had fallen a few days ago. So today's Sunday morning. So Thursday night, my mom fell. She was like reaching over this it's like a nightstand that she uses as an end table in her little den. She was reaching over it and knocked it over, and she fell over with it. And then she landed like on the edge of it, like right on her ribs. And so she'd been in a lot of pain, and it was getting worse. And there were some kind of other contributing medical factors that made her think like, maybe should I go to urgent care? So we decided to take her to urgent care. So we went to the urgent care that's like at the hospital, and got in actually amazingly quick. Had an amazing doctor. She's an ER doctor, and she, based on my mom's symptoms, she was concerned that there was multiple ribs fractured and that they would need more than an x-ray. She likes a CT for that, not an x-ray. So they couldn't do that there in urgent care, that she'd have to send her over to the ER. So we went to the ER, did that, got x-rays, CAT scan, and she's okay. No fractures, just bruised bones of the ribs, and then probably some like damaged cartilage. And so my mom can actually feel some like clicking, some like movement of the rib happening. And that's because of where the rib notches into the cartilage at the sternum. And then just being physically examined by two different doctors, having to maneuver, like taking her sweatshirt off, having to take deep breaths so they can listen to her lungs and her heart, like all that stuff just created a lot of pain. So she went in, pain level like 7. And then, at one point she was 10 and, maybe got back down to a 7 after the pain meds. But, so she was in a lot of pain, but fortunately her ribs aren't fractured and there's no lung injury. So that's really good. But it was really, if you've been around here a while, you know my history at the hospital, and I've done many vlogs at the hospital because my late husband was a frequent flyer there. And fortunately, they have renovated. They were, the last couple years, we've seen they've been doing this renovation, and they basically moved almost like at 90 degrees from where the emergency room used to be. It's in this new spot now. It's much bigger and newer and all that kind of stuff. So fortunately, once we got inside, it's completely different. Doesn't look anything like it did before. That was helpful. But I have to say, the drive up, like once we got kind of like past a certain point like in town where it's like, okay, you're either like heading to the hospital or you're going to the, somewhere else. My stomach started to hurt. I started to feel weird, unsettled, and like pulling into the hospital, and just like how familiar it was. It was like, it wasn't that late when we left, but it was dark. So it was maybe like 6:30. It was dark and it was really foggy, and it just felt so familiar of the countless times that I made that drive in the dark, usually in the middle of the night, heading to the emergency room to meet Sam in the ambulance. So that wasn't fun. But once we were inside, as I said, I felt okay. Finished Hamnet. I was like 16 pages away from finishing when we left the hospital, and so I managed to stay up and finish it. If you don't already know, Hamnet is Maggie O'Farrell's Women's Prize Award-winning plague novel. A novel of the plague, it says, which I think it's kind of funny because normally, in literary fiction, you'll know it's literary fiction because it will say, whatever the title of the book is, a novel on the front. That's like your clue that it's literary fiction. But this one says a novel of the plague. So I just thought that was kind of funny. But anyway, it's the story of Shakespeare's family and their loss of their son, Hamnet, due to the Black Plague. That's what I knew about it. I knew that it's mostly about the son and the wife, Agnes. Shakespeare is never mentioned by name. He's the dad, the husband, the writer, whatever. And so it's very much centered around Hamnet and Agnes. What I didn't realize was kind of how long into the book Hamnet is still alive for. And so I have to say it threw me a little bit getting into it. Part of it was also just I have been so busy with work. I haven't been reading for like very long stretches of time. And so I think if I had a couple, hour-long reading sessions that rather than like 15 minutes here and there, that I might have felt a little bit differently, but I loved it. It was 5 stars. I think the reading experience for me was just a little bit off, not due to the book's own fault. And once I was really into it and was able to give it the time and kind of take any preconceived thought of what the book was supposed to be away, I absolutely loved it. And I felt like I was just like right there in their home with this family. Also, just on a more personal level too, I've kind of been drawn recently to books that are kind of challenging me emotionally, and basically I'm literally working on feeling feelings like in therapy in life. And so a book that touches on death and mourning, and really not just touches on it, but really gets into it, is actually something that's kind of helpful for me. And that's a segue to the next book here, which is The Way Through the Woods on Mushrooms and Mourning. So this book, first of all, is a gorgeous naked hardback. It's just beautiful. And it was literally like calling to me. I got this last Sunday at Barnes & Noble, and it was on an end cap. I don't remember what the other books were. I was in the nonfiction section, and because this is a memoir, and it was just calling to me. It was the cover caught my eye, and then I saw on Mushrooms and Mourning, and I mean mushrooms, like I don't care about mushrooms, but the mourning part, as I was just saying, caught my attention. And so this is a Litt Woon was born in Malaysia, but then she at some point married a Norwegian man, and they lived in Norway. And then he basically just like suddenly drops dead. He arrives at work and just collapses and dies on his office floor, completely out of the blue, only 54. And so they had been talking about maybe taking this like mushroom foraging class together, and in her just processing his death and kind of needing to do something, she decides to go ahead and take this class kind of in honor of him and their plans. And then she becomes basically like a mushroom person. And so it's very much about mushrooms and mushroom, and what's the word? Mushroom, I keep just calling them mushroom people. Like mushroom, what is the word? I can't think of the word. Mushroom forager, basically. And their like hierarchy and the kind of written and unwritten rules and just what it takes to find the right mushrooms and the experience of finding, you know, a rare edible mushroom or something like that, or finding like a new spot to find your mushrooms and what sharing that experience is like. And then kind of interwoven in that is her processing her grief for her husband. So I am like a quarter maybe or so into this, and just trying to kind of lean into experiencing her experience, which helps me experience my own, I guess. There was a moment, the only time I cried in Hamnet was when Shakespeare comes home, because he's like off in London being Shakespeare, and the family is kind of like back at the family home, and he gets word and he needs to come home, and that he needs to come home, and his experience of finding out that his son has died was very emotional. But then there's a moment, the mom, when he comes home, the mom is like preparing his body to be buried, and she's talking about his hair and his straw-colored hair, and she's like touching it, and it feels the same. Like, unlike the rest of his body, his hair feels the same, and she's like trying to like fix it and everything and all this. And so it really made me, doing my late husband's hair, like giving him haircuts, like I was his barber, was like my kind of like favorite way to love on him. And so it just had me thinking about his hair, and like when I was able to see his body after he died, you know, I was thinking like, if the circumstances were different, non-COVID times, would I have wanted to like give him one last haircut, or, you know, style his hair one last time, or whatever. So it was, I think these books are doing what I want them to do. They are great books in and of themselves, but I think for my personal like emotional need, I guess, they're doing what I want them to do. And I literally like feeling feelings is a hard thing. My therapist is always talking about, I am like stuck in my emotional mind, or I'm stuck in my intellectual mind, and I don't have very much access to my emotional mind. And it's the like Venn diagram of the two of them, your rational mind and your emotional mind, that you want to like come together, and that's your wise mind in the center. And this is dialectical behavior therapy. And so I'm so far over here in the rational intellectual mind that like I can't have wise mind because I don't have this like emotional thing, and which is uncommon. It's usually the other way around for people, but basically my intellect has been my coping mechanism for the last 14 years. So these books are helping me. This is really long. Thank you for sitting here for this therapy session with me. I'm actually going to switch it up. Third book, I'm going to get into A Test of Wills by Charles Todd. This is the first book in the Inspector Ian Rutledge mystery series, and this is going to be like a read-along with Kate Howe. And so I think, yeah, we're like 3 days away from the Zoom call about this, and I'm on page 39. So I better get cracking if I want to be a part of that. But I think the idea is to read this whole series through, which I'm not sure how many books it is, but I think it's like in the 20s. So this is supposed to be like a 2-year project. So hopefully I'll really like this. Stephen King says you're going to love Todd. So hopefully he's right. good start so far. I need to, because I've been reading the other books, I need to like refresh my mind even what has happened so far. But anywho, that's what I'm going to get cracking on. I'm actually going later to see Cinderella, a play of Cinderella at a local college with some kind of like business networking friends of mine. And then we're going to go to dinner after that. So hopefully that should be a nice time. And that is all. Okay, so this is interesting. So very early on in this book, there's been murder. Two military guys. One has been murdered, and there's like a possible love triangle situation happening. So Rutledge is talking to a woman. She's the cousin of one of the men, the man who's not dead, and so he's been asking her about her cousin's state of mind, and his response is his thought is it was interesting, he thought, that she spoke freely, warmly, and yet with an odd detachment. Was that it? As if her own emotions were locked away and untouched by the ugliness of murder, or as if she had held them in for so very long that it had become second nature to her. It was a response to widowhood in some women, but there could be many other reasons. So here I had just been talking about all this emotional stuff, and then it came up right there. And he's saying as a response to widowhood, but my experience was very different in that my detachment, essentially walls that I built up, came from the 13 years that led to the widowhood, because of the situation that I was in. So that's all. I just wanted to share that little point because we were just having a chat about it. So I forgot a really important point about Inspector Ian Rutledge. So as I just mentioned, this is just after World War I, and he PTSD is a very strong component of this book. I imagine his own PTSD will continue to be a big part of the story, and this mystery in particular, because we have two military men, the captain and the colonel who was murdered. It is also a big part of the story, or shell shock as they called it at the time. But Rutledge's PTSD kind of manifests itself as this voice of Corporal Hamish that he hears in his head. And Corporal Hamish was a fellow troop who died in the war. And so he has this almost like devil on his shoulder kind of voice that's just kind of ever present with him. The gym, I would be listening to On Animals by Susan Orlean, but my AirPods are dead, so that's a bummer. So I'm just listening to the overhead. Hopefully that doesn't get me copyrighted, but whatever. So I'm just listening to the overhead for right now while I get my upper body workout in.
For a little bit of aesthetic variety, I thought I would give you an update here from my co-working space before I leave for the evening. I'm the last one standing. That's not uncommon. Actually, there's normally this guy, he's a lawyer who is typically here at the same time as me. Like, he's often the only one who's also here late at night. And he basically just got like asked to leave the co-working space. So that was kind of like awkward. And I normally stand right back there over my shoulder. And so my back was to the situation. And so I had my AirPods in because I had been on client calls, but I wasn't actually listening to anything. And so I just like kept doing what I was doing on my computer, pretending like I couldn't hear it, but that was kind of brutal, but it needed to happen. Don't make inappropriate comments to young women or to anyone, but anyhow, I want to talk to you about On Animals by Susan Orlean. That's the book I'm listening to on audiobook, and it is so good. So Susan Orlean is the author of The Library, which is a really popular book a couple years ago, 2-3 years ago. It's been on my TBR for years. I think I got the book of the month copy, or I was an add-on. the book of the month. I've had it, wanted to read it, and just haven't got to it yet. But I was able to get one of those like skip the lines on Libby for on animals. And so basically each chapter is like a deep dive into some animal. Right now, she's talking about pandas, which is quite interesting. There was one on taxidermy. There was one on homing pigeons, which I found really interesting. So she just goes and she interviews certain people and just gives you all sorts of just interesting factoids and like perspective, I guess, on particular animals. So quite enjoying that. It's a really nice audiobook just to have something on because it's not super heavy on anything. It's quite light and just really pleasant to listen to in the car or walking or doing whatever you're doing when you're listening to an audiobook. So I've been quite enjoying that. So I think I'm actually going to wrap up the vlog here. Unfortunately, I did finish Hamnet. I finished Hamnet. Still loved Hamnet. Working my way through the first Inspector Rutledge. And what was the other book I was reading? Oh yeah, the Way Through the Woods, the on mushrooms and morning. So I'll get back to those, reading some of those this evening. Although I'll probably actually be editing this vlog tonight. So we'll see if I get any other reading done tonight. Thank you for watching. See you around the tubes.